No one noticed her. No one remembered her name. But on that scorching afternoon, under the merciless sun that baked the cracked asphalt, she became the only hope for a man who was supposed to have everything. A luxury Maserati stood motionless, smoke curling from its engine like a signal of defeat. Inside, Thomas Weber, a business titan used to boardrooms and private jets, pounded the steering wheel in frustration. 11:43 a.m. In exactly 17 minutes, he was due to present a groundbreaking project to the most influential investors in the country. A project that would cement his legacy, ensure the company's future, and secure his place among the corporate elite. But none of that mattered now, not with steam pouring from under the hood and no cell signal to call for help. His platinum watch gleamed as he rolled up his silk sleeves and popped the hood. He recoiled immediately as a thick cloud of vapor hissed in his face. "Damn it," he muttered under his breath, loosening his tie. His Italian suit, tailored to perfection, was clearly not designed for roadside repairs, and his mechanical knowledge was embarrassingly non-existent. The irony wasn't lost on him. The master of empires defeated by a busted radiator. Then came the rumble of an old pickup truck. Dust trailed behind it like a fading memory. It pulled up beside him and coughed to a stop. The door creaked open. A woman stepped out, tall, calm, dressed in grease-streaked jeans and a plaid shirt rolled up at the elbows. Her curly hair was tied in a no-nonsense bun, and her dark skin shimmered under the punishing sun. "You need help?" she asked, striding toward him with steady purpose. Thomas turned to her, still half-drenched in sweat and stress. "I have a critical meeting in 15 minutes, he snapped, not bothering to hide his irritation. "My assistant's trying to send help, but there's no decent signal in this god-forsaken place." The woman remained unfazed by his tone or his status. She glanced once at the car and stepped closer, ignoring his flustered energy. Without asking, she leaned over the engine as if she owned the thing. The Maserati, worth more than most people's homes, meant absolutely nothing to her. "It's your cooling system," she said, her voice calm but decisive. "I can patch it temporarily. You'll get to the city, but not much farther." Thomas looked her over, skepticism in every blink. "Are you sure I'm a mechanic?" she said, plainly, holding his gaze. "My shop's 10 miles from here." And before he could say another word, she turned back to her truck to grab her tools. Her movements were exact, fluid, like she'd done this 1,000 times. Her hands, rough from years of work, but precise, worked the engine with the confidence of a surgeon. 5 more minutes, she said, without looking up, and you would have fried the whole thing. "These models are powerful," she added, tightening something Thomas couldn't name, but surprisingly fragile. "Like some people." The jab wasn't lost on him, but he let it slide. He was too focused on whether he'd make it to that meeting. "How do you know so much about high-end engines working in—" He stopped himself before finishing the sentence, realizing the prejudice laced in the assumption. "In a forgotten town," she finished, giving him a glance over her shoulder. "I read, I study, I care about my work. Excellence doesn't belong only to big cities, Mr. Weber." That caught him off guard. "You know my name." She didn't even flinch. "Your photo's often in the business section. Hard to miss." With one final twist and a slam of the hood, she stepped back. "That'll get you to town." Relief washed over him. "I owe you one," he said, pulling a leather wallet from his pocket and thumbing through crisp bills. "Please, take this as thanks." It was then as she extended her hand to accept the money that he saw it. A silver ring, simple, worn, set with a small oval-cut blue sapphire, and his world stopped. The moment he saw the ring, time fractured. Everything else, the heat, the smoke, the pressure of the looming meeting, faded into silence. His eyes locked on the delicate piece of jewelry adorning her calloused hand. An antique silver band with a small blue sapphire, understated yet elegant, incongruent with her grease-stained attire. It couldn't be. That ring, it wasn't just familiar. It was unforgettable. He had seen it before 2 decades ago. On a hand much smaller. On a little girl with wide, expressive eyes, standing beneath a tree, swaying gently in the breeze. That ring had been a promise, a farewell gift. The last thing he gave before disappearing from her world. His heart thudded. "Where did you get that ring?" he asked, his voice catching halfway between disbelief and dread. The woman instinctively curled her fingers, shielding the gem. Her posture changed, still steady but more guarded. "It was my mother's." she said, her tone neutral, though something flickered behind her eyes. Why Thomas stepped back like the ground beneath him had shifted. The memories he'd buried, locked away in the name of ambition and expectation, now clawed their way to the surface. She couldn't be. But she was. Somehow, impossibly, she was. The woman he'd forgotten had remembered him. He opened his mouth but said nothing. A gust of dry wind stirred the dust between them. Her eyes lingered on his face, searching. Something about his silence told her he recognized the ring. And maybe more. Without another word, she pocketed the money and turned on her heel. If the car breaks down again, she called over her shoulder, "My shop is 10 miles ahead. First turn after the Aurora City sign." Thomas remained rooted to the spot. That ring. He tried again, but her truck engine roared to life, drowning out his words. She didn't look back. "You're meeting Mr. Weber," she said flatly through the open window. "Your investors are waiting." And with that she drove off, leaving him staring after the fading trail of dust. As the Maserati sped down the road moments later, the polished engine now humming with her makeshift repairs, Thomas glanced once in the rearview mirror, but the truck and the woman were gone. Back at the workshop, Maya didn't cry. She worked, furiously. Her hands moved fast across the disassembled carburetor, more like venting frustration than performing a job. The clinking of metal parts echoed through the garage. "You're going to destroy that carburetor," a voice said gently behind her. Xavier, her uncle, tall and graying at the temples, walked over with a cautious expression. He had known Maya all her life. He had known her story every painful page. He showed up, Maya muttered, wiping sweat and grease from her forehead. Xavier frowned. "The boy," she nodded. "With a broken-down car. Just like fate playing games." Xavier's face hardened. "Thomas Weber, the boy who made promises, the man who broke them," Maya replied coldly, tossing her rag aside. She turned to her workbench, her voice flat. "He looked me in the eye and didn't recognize me. 20 years. He saw the ring, but not the girl who wore it all these years. That night when the garage had gone still and Xavier had gone to bed, Maya opened a small wooden box hidden beneath her bed. Inside, meticulously arranged, were years of newspaper clippings. Headlines celebrating Thomas Weber's rise, his tech breakthroughs, charity initiatives, and most recently his engagement to Elise Harrington, heiress to a fashion empire. She traced a photo with her fingertip, her face unreadable. Tomorrow, she whispered, he won't even remember the ring. But Maya was wrong. Far away in a luxury apartment bathed in moonlight, Thomas sat in silence. In his hand, he held a small wooden object, a carved bird with outstretched wings. A gift from a girl who had believed in him when no one else did. And suddenly, the ring wasn't just a symbol of the past, it was a reckoning. The next morning, the first light of dawn barely touched the edges of Aurora City when an unassuming grey sedan pulled up outside a modest garage. Unlike the luxury car he usually drove, this one didn't announce power or wealth, and neither did he. Thomas stepped out, dressed not in his usual tailored armor, but in jeans and a plain button-down shirt. No tie, no watch, as if shedding the trappings of his other life might help him find the truth buried beneath it. Maya stood at the entrance, wiping oil from her hands, already at work on another engine. Her expression didn't change when she saw him, no surprise, no welcome. Just the quiet readiness of someone who expected unfinished business to return. "We're not open yet," she said, keeping her distance. "I'm not here for service," he replied, stepping forward slowly. "I came to return this." He held out his hand. In his palm sat a tiny wooden brooch, a bird with wings stretched mid-flight. The wood was darkened by time edges slightly worn. Maya's breath caught. Her world tilted. That brooch. The first thing she had ever carved. A farewell gift for a boy who promised he'd come back. The only thing she'd ever made with hope alone. "Open Heart Orphanage," Thomas said quietly. "Orion section. You were the girl who taught me how to carve when the others laughed." Maya's guard faltered. "You promised you'd return," she said, the words escaping before she could stop them. "I tried," Thomas said, his voice rough, "but my father, he had other plans." A heavy silence stretched between them, full of years neither could erase. Just then, Xavier stepped out from the back of the workshop, drying his hands on a cloth. His eyes narrowed as they scanned Thomas from head to toe, reading not just the man, but the burden he carried. So he said in a low voice, "The young prince returns." 20 years late, Thomas didn't flinch. He looked Xavier in the eye. "I understand your mistrust. I came to ask for a chance." To explain, Xavier didn't respond. Instead, he looked to Maya. She crossed her arms. "Why now?" Thomas took a breath, like it hurt to inhale. "In 3 weeks, I'm scheduled to announce my engagement to a woman I don't love. I'm set to inherit a company I secretly despise. I've spent years becoming the man my father demanded I be, not the one I wanted to become." He looked down, then back up. "And then I saw you, or rather, I saw the ring." His phone buzzed again. Elise. 6th call. "She's persistent," Maya said, dryly, eyeing the screen. "My jailer," he muttered, silencing it. "Our marriage is a corporate merger wrapped in designer gowns." Maya raised an eyebrow. "And what do you want from me, Thomas? Absolution?" "Forgiveness? No," he said quietly. "I want answers, and maybe a chance to fix the one promise I broke that still matters." He didn't tell her that last night he had begun an investigation, one that took him deep into archived records, newspaper scans, and forgotten files bearing the Weber name. He didn't mention the phone calls he made or the walls he hit. And Maya didn't tell him about the file hidden beneath the floorboard of her workshop. Documents with signatures, company seals, letters of sale, deeds, all bearing one name in chilling repetition: Ernesto Weber. Her fingers twitched at the thought. Land acquisitions, threats. One signature after another, proof that the property once owned by the Oliveira family was stolen through a network of corporate fraud and forged documentation. The same land now transformed into the crown jewel of the Weber empire. Thomas and Maya stood across from each other in that dusty garage, two people connected by more than memory. Their lives, separate and parallel for decades, had always been on a collision course. And the ring wasn't the only thing binding them anymore. 3 days passed like waves crashing against a fragile shoreline, relentless, consuming, inevitable. Thomas cancelled meetings, he turned down calls from investors, ignored voicemails from Elise, and refused to step foot into the Weber building. Instead, he buried himself in files, digital archives, and old hard copies his father never meant for him to find. Every document led to another shadow, every signature traced back to a lie. It didn't make sense until it did. At the Weber estate, in a room that once belonged to his mother, Thomas pried open a hidden drawer in his father's massive oak desk. There it was, a black folder labeled in red marker, Project Aurora. His pulse quickened. Aurora, the very town where Maya lived. The same name on the land deed. He inserted the key he had secretly copied years ago and flipped the cover open. What he saw made the blood drain from his face. Contracts, lawsuits, forged notarizations, and then, like a dagger in the dark, an official death certificate for Amelia Oliveira Maya's mother. Cause unknown. Date 2 decades earlier. The ink was still sharp, the paper unnaturally clean. But it was a lie, he knew it. She didn't die, he whispered aloud. He faked her death. To get the land. At that exact moment in the workshop 10 miles away, Maya stood before Xavier, her jaw set like steel. In her hands were documents yellowed by time, but marked with the same damning truth. "I'm going to confront him," she said, voice low and unwavering. Xavier's expression tensed. "Maya, this is dangerous. You know what the Webers are capable of." "I've been quiet too long," she replied, thumbing the sapphire ring on her finger. "They destroyed my family. I won't let them erase us." Xavier hesitated. "The documents, are you sure they're authentic?" She nodded. "His father's signature is on every single page." Xavier took a long breath, the kind that precedes a storm. "Then you'll need to be ready, for all of it." That night, just as Thomas prepared to drive to the workshop with what he'd discovered, his phone buzzed. "Maya Central Square, 20 minutes. Come alone." He didn't hesitate. The square in Aurora City was deserted, cast in the muted glow of antique street lamps. Trees swayed gently in the breeze. On a bench beneath one of them, eerily similar to the one from the orphanage, sat Maya, her posture composed, her eyes unreadable. Thomas approached slowly. No words, just the sound of footsteps on concrete. For 20 years, she began, I thought my mother abandoned me. I thought I wasn't enough. Thomas reached into his jacket. Maya, I found something. Something terrible. But she was already holding it, her own version of the truth. My mother's death certificate, she said, her voice trembling but resolute. Forged, signed by your father. He threatened her, made her disappear, all so he could take our land. She handed him the brittle papers. Thomas stared numb. As the dots connected in horrifying clarity, the handwriting matched what he'd seen only hours ago. My mother left these with Xavier. Maya continued producing a faded photograph. Before she vanished, in the picture was a young woman with kind eyes wearing the same sapphire ring. Behind her stretched a vast green valley, now paved and bulldozed, crowned with the Weber Company's newest complex. She didn't abandon me, Maya said. She was erased. Thomas closed his eyes, the weight of guilt and revelation nearly too much to bear. Tomorrow, Maya said quietly, I'm going to the inauguration ceremony, in front of the press, the board, the politicians. I'll tell them what happened. Thomas opened his eyes, stunned. You'll be risking everything. I've got nothing left to lose. He hesitated, then shook his head. Don't wait. Maya blinked. What, my father? He moved the event up. It's tonight. Only the inner circle knows. She sat back, shocked. We can go now, Thomas said. We have a chance to confront him before he can spin the story or cover it up. Maya looked at him, really looked at him. For a moment she saw the boy she used to know. All right, she said, let's end this. In the limo on the way to the complex, Thomas outlined his plan. He had access to the building, the stage, even the security system. He could get her in position. Public exposure would make retaliation almost impossible. But what he didn't say, what he hadn't had the courage to tell her, was that he'd discovered one more thing. Her mother wasn't in a clinic. She was being held, silently, out of sight, on a private Weber property used as collateral for his father's silence. And now everything was about to unravel. The gala was already in full swing when the limousine slipped through the security gates. Crystal chandeliers glowed over champagne flutes, and sleek suits mingled with shimmering gowns. The elite of business and politics had gathered to celebrate the crowning achievement of Ernesto Weber, a sprawling, state-of-the-art corporate complex built atop the bones of a stolen legacy. As they entered, Maya's breath hitched. The land beneath her feet, once the vibrant green valley her mother had walked with her hand in hers, was now cold grey concrete. Steel and glass towers reached for the sky, bearing the Weber name in glowing blue. What had once been home was now a monument to theft. Thomas walked beside her, stiff and unreadable. But inside his mind was a storm. Every corner of this place reeked of betrayal, of his father's ambition, of his own blindness. They stepped into the main hall, a space so large it swallowed sound. At the center stood Ernesto Weber, basking in flashbulbs and applause, his posture imperial. Thomas, he called out as soon as he spotted his son. His smile faded as he noticed Maya beside him. What is she doing here? He asked, tone dropping like ice. She's a special guest, Thomas replied evenly, someone with a powerful story to tell. Ernesto's jaw clenched. My office. Now. They followed him into a sleek private suite overlooking the entire complex, soundproofed, immaculate, controlled, and toxic. As soon as the door closed, Ernesto turned sharply. How much, he snapped at Maya. What's your price to disappear like your mother should have? Maya didn't flinch. I want to know where she is. Ernesto laughed, a dry, humorless bark. She probably doesn't even remember you. You think there's something noble in digging up corpses? Thomas stepped forward, phone discreetly recording in his pocket. So she's alive, he said. You've kept her hidden. Prisoner is such a dramatic word, Ernesto muttered. She lived comfortably, in exchange for land that wasn't worth half its value at the time. It was a deal. Maya's eyes narrowed. A deal made under threat isn't a deal. It's extortion. Before Ernesto could respond, the door opened. Xavier entered slow but steady, and beside him stood a woman with eyes so familiar, Maya felt her knees weaken. Mother, she whispered. Amelia Oliveira nodded, her voice choked. Maya. They stared at one another, 2 decades of pain colliding in a single instant. Then, with trembling steps, they closed the distance, collapsing into each other's arms. Tears fell silently, soaking into fabric and time alike. Behind them, Elise stood in the doorway. Her designer dress didn't hide the camera in her hand or the fury in her gaze. She had followed them, heard everything. "This entire family is built on lies," she said, holding up a worn file. "Adoption papers, altered records. You didn't just steal land, Ernesto. You adopted Thomas under false pretenses." Ernesto paled. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I know enough," Elise snapped. "Thomas isn't your biological son. He was an orphan, a replacement. One of many, it seems." Thomas's breath stopped. What he whispered. "You think it was chance you ended up in that orphanage?" Ernesto scoffed. "Your mother died giving birth, so I replaced you. Clean history, no loose ends." The room fell silent. Even the air seemed to stop moving. Thomas stumbled back as if the floor itself had betrayed him. The man he had called father wasn't his father. The name he carried wasn't his. Maya stepped closer, her voice gentle. "Then that means—" Elise nodded. "You're half-siblings. Same mother. Records were forged to keep it buried." Maya turned toward her mother. The ring, Amelia murmured, reaching out. "I gave it to Thomas before they took him. Told him it was from the mother he'd never meet." Thomas touched the ring around Maya's finger, the same ring that had led him to her. That had started this unraveling. A siren wailed in the distance, growing louder. Closer. "Police." "This ends tonight," Thomas said, his voice steady at last. "No more lies, no more silence." Downstairs, guests began to murmur as officers entered the building. Cameras turned, whispers turned to gasps. The Emperor's robe was unraveling. Within hours, headlines would explode. CEO Ernesto Weber arrested in shocking family scandal. Illegal adoptions, forged documents, and stolen land revealed. And for the first time in decades, the truth would stand where lies once ruled. The fallout was immediate and merciless. By morning, every news outlet from coast to coast had plastered the story across their front pages. Footage from Elise's recordings had gone viral, Ernesto Weber's cold admissions, Amelia's reappearance, Thomas's devastating discovery of his origins. The story had everything: power, lies, betrayal, redemption. It wasn't just a scandal, it was a reckoning. Weber empire crumbles after decades of deceit. Orphaned CEO reclaims true identity amid corporate collapse. Stolen land returned to Oliveira family after 20 years of fraud. The Weber board moved quickly to distance itself. Shares plummeted, partners withdrew, projects stalled. And Ernesto, once untouchable, was now behind bars, facing a growing list of charges: fraud, forgery, extortion, illegal adoption, unlawful imprisonment. But amidst the wreckage, something else began to rise. Thomas stood before a judge renouncing the Weber name. "I was never one of them," he said, voice firm. "My real name is Thomas Oliveira." The court granted the change that same day. Meanwhile, Maya, Amelia, and Xavier returned to the land that had once been stolen from them, now legally restored to its rightful owners. But they didn't rebuild a mansion. They didn't construct new offices or towers. Instead, they broke ground on something far more meaningful: the Olivia Foundation for Abandoned Children. Where once had stood a monument to greed, there now rose a sanctuary of second chances. The land, rich with natural springs and shaded by tall trees, was transformed into a dual-purpose space, part environmental reserve, part community center. There were workshops, shelters, libraries, gardens. It served the people Ernesto had once sought to displace. 6 months later, on a golden afternoon, thick with birdsong and sawdust, Maya stood beneath the open-air roof of the newly expanded Esperanza mechanical workshop, tightening a bolt on a rebuilt engine. Across the garage, Thomas sat at a wooden desk reviewing grant applications for the foundation. He wore no tie, no Rolex, just a loose shirt and a carved pendant, a bird mid-flight resting against his chest. Maya glanced over. "Still feels strange?" she asked, wiping her hands on a rag. He looked up, smiling for real this time. "Strange? Yes, but also right." She nodded. "Finding out your whole life was a lie doesn't exactly come with a manual." Thomas closed the file and leaned back. "Maybe, but it led me here, and that's what matters." He turned the pendant between his fingers. "We lost 20 years, but we regained something stronger. Our truth, Maya said softly. Our family, he corrected, smiling. Amelia walked in, just then holding a tray of lemonade. Her eyes, once marked by decades of sorrow, now shimmered with peace. She looked from Thomas to Maya, her children finally standing side by side. Her gaze landed on Maya's hand. You're still wearing it. Maya looked down at the sapphire ring. I think I always will. Amelia smiled. It kept us connected even when we didn't know it. Thomas nodded. Sometimes the most intricate lies fall apart because of the simplest things. A ring, Maya said. A promise, Thomas replied. And a truth that refused to stay buried, Amelia added. Outside, the sun dipped low over the restored valley. The same place where a stolen empire once rose was now home to healing, to hope, and to a family reunited not by blood alone, but by a shared will to uncover the truth. Because in the end, no matter how deep the betrayal, no matter how powerful the lie, truth remembers. And it always finds its way home. If this story stirred something deep inside you, don't let it fade into silence. Some truths take decades to surface. Some wounds are passed down through generations. But when someone dares to confront the lie, when someone says enough, that's when healing begins. If you've ever felt forgotten, if you've ever been lied to, cast aside, or forced to hide your truth, know this: you are not alone, and your voice matters. Drop a comment below. The truth always finds its way. Let us know which part of Maya and Thomas's journey hit you the hardest. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, stories that don't just entertain, but awaken something in you.